Yeah. I do actually. Okay, one thing that group 2 did pretty well was to document their user stories. I would like all groups to do that and to keep track of what they've done. What group 2 doesn't seem to have done well is to do anything the last update I saw was end of February. So that's something I obviously don't want you. I want you to keep going. The other thing I want to see is when I see these comments, okay, so where is that tweet? What do you think I want to see more of, Nick? Yeah, I want to see more of your name, unless as a group, there was one group, Austin, so Skylar and Jacob, he said that you're working together sometimes, and then so the updates come through him. if that is happening, let me know so that I know that you're doing that. Otherwise, my expectation is that all of you are making as many as equal number of comments or some more. There is sort of parity, not otherwise it gives me the impression or understanding that one or two people are doing everything. So those are two things you have to start applying. At the very least, I want to see the workflows and gradually and today what I'm going to I had you finish up the discussion on the piece on adding the tracking based on whether a user has added, edited, or deleted a course offering. I'll review that very quickly. Then I will get into the unit testing. So I'm expecting you to have unit tests for normally searches, but today I'll discuss add and possibly delete. I'll have you figure out the edit option as well. So for at least two of your clauses, two of your controllers, we are doing our unit testing through the controllers. So for two of your controllers, I'm expecting you to have the CRUD tests. And the reason I always say more than one, why do I say that? Why do I not say just one?
No, more than one test.
Well, why do I ask you to do something like in this case, unit testing for select, add, update, delete? I want you to do it for more than one controller. I want you to do it at least for two, not just one. What's the reasoning behind it? What? Yes, and how many are in each group? More than one, right? So that's why I want each of you to try it out. So sometimes why do you think some students didn't do well or did quite poorly on the exam? If you're just doing what we are doing in class, is that your understanding? And I keep bringing this up again and again. If you only follow what we are doing in class, you have not understood it as yet until you try it out on your own. Is that clear? It's at this point, at the end of this class, the only understanding that will show up is truly whether I've understood it or not. Whether you've understood it is to apply it on your project. So it's important to try it out. And if you want, especially if you're still having questions, doubts, meet with me. I'm going to have a few extra hours, and also I'm trying to have the sessions in the larger rooms whenever I can. So for today, this week I have to travel to Pittsburgh in the afternoon, so I'm not going to be able to meet anytime other. So today, 11:30 to around 1, I can stay a little bit beyond 1. Let's just say 1:15. I don't know if the room will be available. This is the accounting conference room. That's 335. And on Monday, that's March 25th, like 5:30 p.m. to around 7 p.m. I have another meeting from 7 to 8 with Jacob and Dane, so I'll just say around 6:50. This is also in that same room. And if you have questions, if you want to discuss, and some of, like, I think even if others, if you don't have a question, sometimes if you are just wanting to maybe discuss, one of the things that Abdur Rahman has said is he has learned the most by trying to fix problems that other students have asked. So if you want to learn by doing that, you can show up, or if you're just very generous by nature and want to help, you can show up too. Anyways, I like a collaborative environment where I'm not just looking at one person's questions, or I'm not the only one responding. Anyway, so those are the two I've set up. I'll probably have try to have another session, extra session on Tuesday as well. Okay, that's for. If you have any questions, meet me either today or Monday, and I'm expecting significant progress on your projects. What we are discussing today, as I said, is Unit 12. After we discuss the concept that we had here of tracking changes, and it's not only tracking changes, but also trying to assign responsibility to who made what change. And in a lot of projects, you probably want to be aware of, especially one of the things that, those of you who are taking data analytics, have you heard of this guy? How many of you have heard of this guy? Nate Silver. If you say you're doing data analysis and you don't know this guy, you shouldn't say you're doing data analysis, because he really has popularized data analytics, and he's probably one of during the last two elections, he's probably come, well, in the 2012 presidential election, I think he forecast 49 of the 50 states correctly, and even in the last election, he came closest to predicting. He had a 30% prediction that Trump might win. So essentially, so if you're interested, his website is 538. So anyways, so the reason I wanted to bring him up was if you're as far as if you're doing any kind of data analytics, one of the things when people predict or forecast, if you have whatever TV pundits and all these books now currently with, I guess, the basketball season, right? So they make these predictions. How many times are they held accountable for their predictions? Almost never, right? They just say things, and so the thing is, if you connect them to the predictions and then tie it up to what the actual results were, then you can keep track of it and say all those who just make mindless predictions, the credibility goes down. And that's actually what Nate Silver does. He keeps track of 30 or 40 different forecasts that are made for whatever politics, any other area, and then the weight of those polls will either go up or down based on what? How reliable they are, how close are the predictions to the actual results. So if you are doing any data analytics or anything, you want to sort of assign responsibility. And this is what we are doing with tracking, is essentially that. We are trying to figure out who did what. So let's go to my course offerings controller. This is where we were. And there is one concept that I wanted you to practice or apply, which let's see if how many of you tried it out. if you have a lot of methods, unfortunately, in this particular course offering is very overloaded. Should be cleaned up and distributed a little bit. So add course offering was what we were looking at last class, end of last class, and I filled it out because I didn't want to again type everything from scratch. So I'm assuming that all of you, or most of you, figured this out. Right? Do you have any questions on this? Yeah.
Why did we create the variables to store the actual
values instead of just directly putting it inside here?
Instead of just calling them straight in there.
Well, it's just I know what the values are standing for. It's just you could bring it in here. You could make a case that well, it is using the dot notation, so the variables are fairly clear. The only ones that are probably not as clear would be these three. Okay, so it's usually I tend to do it by my whatever convention of capturing the values before I send it in. The other thing you will see that if I want to reuse, it might be necessarily, but it might be cleaner. I'll discuss that. But yeah, coming back to your question, this part is not absolutely necessary. You could capture it in here. The only other case I would make is each time you would have to use this dot notation, and this is going to become pretty large. But other than that, other than sort of readability of code, I wouldn't say there is that much difference.
So for the role, the function that's behind the implementation, that's only the department chair to it. So what do you need?
No, it's not only for the department chair. It is also for the coordinator. Where is it saying it's only the department chair? It's only the department chair can assign an instructor to a course offering that doesn't have an instructor. That's the only case for the coordinators can make these changes. If that was not the case, then you could just take the role directly. Okay, so there are a couple of issues here. One is the repetition of the same code again and again and again. So 3 different times. So how many of you figured out how to? I looked at two of the submitted programs, and neither of them had it separated out. Did anyone separate it out? You did half.
Yeah.
How can you do half?
So what we did the assigning for the variables and the private method.
Okay.
Like how to figure out the actual, like the type and the roles, but the actual adding was the next method.
Okay. Well, the part obviously up to here, if you look at add, right, okay. Obviously, these two, we have to leave it in the method itself. It's from this point on.
So what we did is the role type and the role and the name we did in the private method, but the actual adding the new assigning the actual object to each one of the cross offering changes.
Okay.
That's we need to the method because we couldn't figure out how to actually push that to the method and then figure out which one to add to the resource.
Okay. Okay, let's try this out. So I'm going to take this common code and just say Control-C. Okay, just below the add method, I can obviously in object orientation, the sequence of where the methods come doesn't matter. If you are using structured programming, then the sequence matters. So I'm going to call this public. What's the name of the method? What am I doing here? Each time I am adding to course offering changes. Add course offering changes. Okay. Does it have to return anything? Okay, so I can say this is void. Okay. And inside of it is the code that starts with, in my case, creating the variables, of getting the values for each of the CRM days, start time, and so on, down to saving the changes. Okay. So where is the complaint coming from? Yeah. Okay, so the object doesn't exist. So if a method doesn't have something that it needs to do its work, what's the concept that you apply? How do you send it into the method? Parameter. Okay, so course offering is the object that's needed. So course offering. Okay. So that's one parameter. So that's taken care of. There are no other squiggly red lines. So are we actually done? Okay, somebody other than Abdul Rahman, why are we not done? Okay, Nick? Okay, it's going to add every time, and it can be add, edit, or delete. Okay, so this cannot be hard-coded, so what do we do? Well, we need to, so we have to get the value from wherever it's being called. So Jacob, what do we do? Okay, string, this is, what do we call this? Okay, change type, okay. Change type. And once we do that, what happens here? What's the difference? Again, sometimes I find students sometimes tell me, oh, programming is syntax and I just don't know the syntax. That's just an excuse. Underlying everything is logic and a concept, right? So if you understand logic and concepts, programming is very simple. So right now, based on what Jacob suggested, and I'm going to blame Jacob for it, I suddenly got a red line which I didn't have previously. So how many of you understand why this it's complaining? What's the cause of it, and what's the solution? Do all of you know the 3 answers why this is a problem? How to fix it? Well, somebody other than Abdul Rahman, Jake, or Nick. Any other hands up? Hands? No? That's very disappointing. Then you don't understand object orientation at all. What's the concept here? This is what? A parameter, and what is this? This is a variable inside of a method. So it's what type of variable? It is local to the method, so it's a local variable, right? So what's happened now? Since I have a parameter by the same name as local variable, basically both of these are found inside the method. So what's it saying? I'm duplicating the same name for two variables that are both seen within the method. So which means I cannot have the same name for a parameter as I do for a local variable. So what's the solution? I don't want Jake to answer this, somebody else. At least reason through it. That's ultimately what companies want you to do. It's not about just knowing the answers, but yeah. Just move it out. There's no longer a need for this, right? So I got rid of it. Now let's go to, so now this add course offering changes. Well, also I don't have to make it public. When do I make something public? If I want to use it elsewhere. If I don't want to use it elsewhere and I want to confine it, then then I would make it private. So, well, in this case, I don't know if we can make a case for it being seen outside, but just since we're only using it inside, I will just keep it as private. So now let me go to where I need to make these changes. So all of this code that I have after save, add and save changes, do I need all of this now? And the answer is all the way just before I redirect, all of this I can get rid of, right? And what should I now do? What did I call that? Add course offering changes. What should I send it? What's it expecting to do its work? Okay, somebody, I'm going to look this side to see. Okay, Matt, you had a technical interview recently, so tell me what's it expecting? No, it's not requiring just that, but what's the first parameter? It's telling you right in the IntelliSense. It's wanting the object, right? So Brody, what's the object? Where is the object? Do we have access to the object? Right here, when we added in the form, when we added it, it was bound to this method, right? So we have that object, and that's the object we are passing to add course offering changes. So add that course offering object, and then what's the second one? What do we need to pass? Okay, what's the change type? It's a string, okay, so what will we pass it? Do we have the value? Okay, add as a string, okay. If you want, you can make a variable, but that's pretty much it. Okay, okay, so this is how we call this, but are we done with this? What was the purpose of having made the separate method? I want to reuse it, right? So wherever I used, I have that logic, I go in and okay, so I'll look at Dave this side and ask him, so what do I do now? Well, I don't need to do that now. I have Well, where do I have the information about which users logged in? Samantha, maybe you can help Dave. Should I find out which users logged in here? Okay, Carter, you have your finding out which user is logged in is right here. So all of that responsibility has been taken over by this method. Okay. So as Carter said, you just call this method that we just created and send it. Okay, so I'll come back to Samantha and Dave. So Samantha, what do I do here? How many of you know what I need to do here? Okay, Kevin, what do I do?
You put course offering.
Okay, so it's the same signature, right? It's asking for the course offering object to do its work. But the only difference here is that instead of adding, we have deleted. So the string that we need to send in about change type is delete. And then finally, for edit, the same thing. I'm going to remove all of this code down to save changes, and then I'll say add course offering changes, course offering object, and edit. Okay. So what's this is called, the concept that we are applying here is called did the functionality not work previously? The answer is the functionality was fine. What did we do now? Is there any value that we add in the changes that we just made? We just made it cleaner code, right? So cleaner code, which is easier to read as well as to execute, but more importantly, modify or extend, change. So what are we practicing here? This is what does object orientation say? One of the concepts of object orientation, right once, used many times. So which is ultimately it comes down to reuse. So the issue is if it's code that you find repeating, you have to find a way of encapsulating and then just calling it. That's a very basic object-oriented design principle. Okay, so let's see if this works. I'll go ahead, build it. So if we had to make any changes, we would only make it to this one method instead of making it in multiple places. And you have to, I deliberately went through the process of figuring out how to construct this method. So you have to, what you have to really be clear about is what parameters are needed for a method to do its work, and then does it have to return back something or not. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Obviously, it compiled for me. If you have problems, it's because you didn't understand stuff. You have to figure it out. If you make a mistake, the best way to learn is to fix it. So I'm going to start the application, It's actually, I just took out the repeating code, so you should be able to see what the repeating code is. Okay, let's see. I just created a link for changes. So the only one that shows up is the one I used for testing. Now, if I go in and actually make the change, so let's say what was it that I said? I had a set of requirements for you to do. Let's see if I can pull that out. I'll try to duplicate what we have here. So a coordinator added a course, let's say 351. So I'm going to, okay, I'm going to add this in. I'll just create something 999. Okay, do you need to use your phone?
Yeah, I'm asking those questions, but can't you my screen on this one?
Who's that?
Me. We're discussing the project.
Well, you don't need to discuss the project now. I can unfortunately see I don't know whatever it is, but I am very aware of that. So please put away your phones. Okay, if I click on this, how many of you are expecting it to work? Because I know this stuff very well, right? So it should work. Well, okay, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? And this is where I keep telling students it's logic, it's not magic, or the stuff it's not about you don't, like, I don't know C# syntax. No, if you don't get it to work, you don't understand logic. So what is the logical problem here? And it's telling you right here. Okay, so why wasn't anything assigned to user ID? I'm looking this side because okay, Matt?
Are you like on the channel on the start page?
Am I on it? Okay, tell me more clearly what's happening.
Like, when it's recording the user ID, isn't it recording who's making changes? So
yes.
if you're logging on the web page, when you need to be logged in.
Okay, so what did I not do? I didn't log in. So for this functionality to work, I have to be logged in. Yeah, you have to add. So the issue is if a user is not logged in, this is going to fail. So, and since we are wanting to monitor who's making the changes, we don't want some random person to come in and, especially, let's say that you don't want me to be teaching any of the courses. You can come in and then change me as not being the instructor. So I don't want you to be doing that. Well, maybe then I won't be having to teach any course. It's maybe good. So anyways, coming back to this, so I have to set each of these operations under the authentication. So where do I put it? Yes.
So wouldn't it be easier just put the changes tab in the authorized, so when you log in, it only shows up if you're logged in, and then that way it's supposed to be logged in before you.
So you won't even see that. Yes, that's the ideal way. So that's something I'm going to have you do. So which means we do want users to be able to see the list of these courses, but what we don't want them to do is add, delete, or edit if they are not if they are a coordinator or a department chair. So that's something you can do. You put the validation on it on the form, but I'm going to put it on just the just over here where, let's see, where add course offering. So they cannot click on add course offerings. I'm going to set it to, let's see, this authorize roles, and I can say roles equals, what are the department chair, comma, what's the other one? Coordinator. And since it's within quotes, you have to make sure you get it exactly right. So similarly, I'm going to do it for delete. And finally for edit as well. So I think I can just put it up here. So I just, let's see if this, if I run it now. Okay, so search course offerings, search. If I want to add, it should bring me here. Let's see. I'll try to do it with the, tab the test coordinators, test coordinator 1 at this just log me in. Okay, I'm logged in now, so that allows me to come in here. 8:30. G19 to I'm just giving some random values, and I'll make Dr. Peace teach all the courses so that you're all happy. And so, okay, now I'll go to changes and see if it's recorded. Okay, it got recorded. It should. If it's not, it's your fault. As I said, it's up to you to, but I want you to understand that what we are, the concept of what we are doing, it depends on the user being logged in. So they shouldn't be able to do whatever the additions, deletions, edits, and so on. So, so let's say the department chair says Dr. Peace is being assigned all the courses, so I need to now make a change. Log back in as a department chair, which currently happens to be Dr. Peace himself. So, okay, okay, so if I log back in, go to search, and then I search this, the systems analysis. Oh, I guess how many times have I added it? Okay, so I'll just change this to maybe Dr. Nazir. As you can see, I don't have my name in there. Okay, so let's see, if I go to changes, should go into edit, and then finally if I go back in and I just want to delete it, the lost course, I just delete and then go to changes. Okay, so it has to record everything, right? So so this is about it for this application. As I said, it has fairly useful applicability, is there any group or any project where you need to trace? I know that Colton and Jake, your project, you want to trace requests and who made the approval and so on. In your case as well, okay. So that type of tracking, you can use this concept there potentially. Okay, let me go on to the next, which is unit testing. And also the other concept I would like for you to apply is object orientation, and it's actually given a particular name which I forgot to specify. This is called refactoring. Refactoring is cleaning up the code to make it easier, and this can, in some cases, run into huge amounts of money. So, so if you're working as a designer and developer, if you're writing up, whatever your companies are very big on value added, right? So in this case, if let's say a manager asked you, so what did you do this entire morning? And so what functionality did you add? So what's your answer to that? Did you add any functionality? The answer is no, I didn't add any functionality. So if you're so the thing is, then if your manager tells you, okay, so you didn't do anything right now, so why should I pay you? What's your response to that? How do you document what you did? How do you make your case? Can you make a case for you being hired by whatever company that's paying you?
I'm making it more easier for the person after me if I let the company actually understand what I did and try to
Okay.
So be able to calculate.
Okay, so you've just made it significantly easier to understand the code, to make changes to the code, to add to the code, and you should put a value which is potentially higher than just creating a functionality. So these are some things that you should be aware of going into. So how do you provide a value what you're doing? And this is, the companies that do this are the companies that are very big on software quality. So if they don't care about it, then some companies, consulting companies I know, they will actually say, well, unless it's billable, and what is billable to is the client company going to see this? The answer is no. So there are going to be some companies that say, okay, if it's not going to be seen by the customer, don't do it. My suggestion is don't work for those companies, because sooner or later the system will crash. Anyways, then let me come back to the unit testing part. So all of you have this working now in this clean way, not a messy way? Okay. Yes? No? Okay. You have to get it to work. That's it. And understand how it works. Let me get to the unit testing of how you add. Okay, so let's see. We need to get ourselves into a slightly different mindset of using the repository. Okay, so remember, this is again a higher level concept. So for unit testing, what are the two big concepts that we are trying to sort of understand or need to know? Dependency inversion. So the controller on which we are working is the instructor's controller, which course offering is much harder to work with, so that's why we are going with a simpler controller, instructor controller. So dependency inversion for, so instead of instructor controller directly accessing the database, right? So previously we had it going, did I delete it? So it used to go to the database directly. Now we are having, so you could see, we used to say database.instructors, whatever. So instead of going to the database, we are going to the repository. So if you go into your classes, the model, we created a separate directory, a separate folder for instructor model. Remember, don't call it instructor, the same name as the class. I have the interface, instructor repository, which has list, add, delete. We try to finish delete about 20, I'm sorry, the add. We have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes left. Okay, we did this. You have all of these 4 methods in the interface, right? Yes, no? Okay. So remember our change of the dependency is, so what's at the highest level now? Previously, the database was at a higher level than the controller, right? Now we are wanting to move the database down to a lower level. So what's at the highest level? Is it the controller? But not only the repository, and specifically it is the interface. Okay, so the interface is at the highest level, and then you are going to have the controller and the implementation of the interface, which is the instructor repository. And how do you know it's implementing it? By, that's right, it's the same symbol as what? Inheritance, okay? So when we say we are implementing a repository, an interface, we are basically saying that all of the methods that are there in the interface are going to get implemented, and this is where we are accessing the database. Okay. So that's one concept, and we are going to say we are using the async version. Did you do this last time when we were discussing it? Yes, no? Okay. The add instructor takes in the instructor as an input parameter. We said we are going to use the async version of it because it works better for, especially, it has an advantage of actually being more efficient. We have not discussed it as much. Maybe I should at some point discuss a little more about having the async, which is having multiple threads in which it's executing. But basically, it goes to the database and says, okay, do this action, and when you're done, what is it going to say? You come back and tell me that you're done. Okay, so this task is basically saying whether I'm done or not. So you're waiting until the task is done. So this just these 2 lines of code. We are adding the instructor asynchronously and then returning asynchronously after saving it. And when the task is done, it will say I am done. Okay, so that's the return type. The same thing for delete. We are going to say, well, we are first finding that instructor object, and then we are removing. There's no async version of remove. There's an async version of add, but not of remove. But there is an async save changes, which is what we use, and we get the result of is it done, is it completed or not. Okay, so So those are the two methods we are going to deal with for our testing. So we have our two methods set up here, and then when we go to the controller, what we are doing is instead of directly calling the database, we're going through the repository. And since the repository is going to say I'm done or not, we are going to use this keyword await to wait until it's done. Okay. So this keyword tells us, okay, I'm done or not, and then we can proceed once it's done. So that's as far as, that's the only statement here, because the adding is done, instead of being done here, it's being done on the repository. You understand this, right? Okay. So what's the next step? So one piece is this concept of dependency inversion using the interface and the repository that implements it. What's the other concept? Go into the test project, and what should we do here? We are using a mock. Okay, so a mock data to test it, and this is for unit testing. We don't want to go to the database. If we use the database, what type of testing are we doing? We are integrating different units. Once we go outside of the application memory space, we are saying it's outside, it's an entirely different unit. So we are now testing how two different units communicate with each other. So with the repository, it's a mock data repository that we are going to use. Okay, let's try to set this up. I'm going to want to make sure that I get the syntax correct here. So we are going to look at adding. The first time we looked at, in terms of the CRUD functionality, this was, we were looking at the select operation. So I'm going to keep it up here so that you can see what we did with the select or search. So this is going to be for adding. So we are going to call this, so instructors controller should, we'll call this, anytime it's a test, we have to put this fact within square brackets above the method, public. We are not going to return anything, but because it's going to work with an asynchronous method, one of the things we are going to do is make this async as well, since it's going to work with this add instructor, which is asynchronous. So that's why I'm going to make this method that calls it, where is my method, that asynchronous as well. And whenever you make a method asynchronous, what is the clause that tells you whether that method is done or not? The task. Okay, so whenever you have async, you typically see task associated with it. So this is obviously not recognizing where async is located. What do I? Let me just, I'll keep this. I'll try to finish up the method signature. I want to. So should add new instructor is the name of the method. And I'll see if doing this. Okay. So task, I need to get in a namespace. It's under threading. So I'll have that unique using statement. Okay. So this is basically setting up the header of the test method. Now, what I want inside of it is going to be a series of steps that we we have looked at earlier. The first thing is setting up the mock repository. And instead of typing it all over again, I'm going to copy this over. So I'm creating the mock data repository. Okay. In the previous case, I had sent it a list of instructors, but in this case, I'm only going to, I'm actually not going to give it an instructor, because in the previous case, the mock repository was, remember, the mock repository is sent to the controller, right? So this we need. Okay, so I'll take this controller and say, okay, I'm creating a new controller, instructors controller, and for the instructors controller to work, what does it need? If you go to the constructor, it says it needs the repository, right? So when I go back to my test, so what's this saying? I'm going to mock the repository. So I'm going to pretend as though this is actually going to the database, the actual repository, but I'm doing it without going there. Okay, so these two, this is a constructor, and this is a constructor that uses the mock object. Okay, now we have to do a couple of things in between. The first thing is I want to sort of look inside of this repository and then see whether, so what are we doing? We are saying this controller method is supposed to, when I go into add instructor, what's it supposed to do? It needs to take the instructor object and create it, right? So when I use the mock object, what should happen? So this mock repository should be able to say, okay, whatever object was sent to this controller, I'm now able to get that object, okay? So for that, we need to do two things. One is I need to set up an instructor object saying, I'll just call it added instructor, and I'll initialize it to null. Okay. And this added instructor will be retrieved after the method does its work. Okay. So this is a concept that you have to sort of think through a little bit, and that's why I want you to apply it on your project. So mock instructor repository, and this is also, we are doing something called a setup on the repository, the setup method, and within that, what we are doing is, we are saying we are going to pass this, we are going to use, and what does add instructor take? So if we said, I'm using the mock repository, and I'm using this lambda expression, m dot. So this, what is the method I'm using? Add instructor, right? And add instructor requires what? It requires an instructor object. So what we are going to say is the mock repository, I'm going to be able to pass any type, as long as it's an instructor object, it should do its work. So the way you specify it is, it reads as it dot is any. So it is any. So if you read it fluently as it is any, within the angle braces, it is any what? Any instructor object. So instructor So, okay, so you have a series of parentheses here. So it dot is any instructor. So you read it without hesitation. It becomes it is any instructor. Okay. So we are going to give add instructor any instructor. Okay. So now what do we do? After we set it up, we are going to say there is a return, and this add instructor, if you look at it, what does it say? So if you look at the controller, it's going to come back and say whether the task was completed or not. So where is my test? Okay, right here. I want to make sure that it is the task is completed. So task dot completed task. Okay, and then the other piece that I want to do is there is something called a callback, which actually returns the object that was created. So that's so the return is saying whether the task was completed or not, but callback is where the actual object is going to be located, and what we are calling back is the instructor object that was created by the method. And so what we want to pull out is, or assign to, what again, I'm working with the mock repository. I'll use the Lambda expression, and I will say what I want to do here is this particular object, added instructor, I want to set it to whichever object was passed in, and whichever object was passed in is this same object as whatever I have here, which is referenced as. So whatever object that I pass in to add instructor, I'm going to retrieve it and give it to this object here. Okay, so that's the way I set up this mock repository. Now, after I set this up, I've set up the mock repository. I have the controller taking the mock repository. But what I want to do for the actual testing, so all of this is the arrange. The action is I have to now create an actual instructor object, and for that, just to make it easier, I'll scroll down, take one of these. I'll just take Dr. Peace. Okay, so I'm just copying this over under this, and just to make sure this is all inside of this method here. Okay. Okay, so this is saying that I have a new instructor object created, and how do I use this? This is the action here. This is where I act. How do I act? I act by, so I have Dr. Peace as the instructor, but the thing that what the action itself is, this add on the controller. So instructor, control instruct this controller dot add instructor, and what do I pass in? Dr. Peace, right? So I'll pass this in, instructor. Okay, so now what do I need to do? I want to, anytime it's an async method, I have to await. Okay, and then on the left side, once it is actually done, I will take it into, we call it variable result. Okay, so whatever it is returning, I will retrieve in there. So inside of it, what I can compare is this. So I can, if I look inside result, I can see what it is doing, which is redirecting. But the more important thing that I want to look at is what is getting returned is added instructor, right? That's getting returned to the repository here. So what should this added instructor be equivalent to? Dr. Pease. So we have to compare what the instructor's name is with the, so I'm going to assert what? Assert dot or equal. So what is expected? Instructor dot, if I just want to break it down, I can say instructor dot, let's say email or instructor last name, whatever you want to use. So if I said instructor last name, what should this be equal to? Okay, this is the expected. What is the actual? The actual is existing in added instructor. So added instructor dot instructor last name. So this is comparing the last names. If I want to compare the objects, this is not going to work. If I just compare the two objects, why would it not work? Well, maybe, what did I say we are going to when we are comparing these two, do you remember what we compared it on? So I comparable, what did we compare it? Where is my file? Where is this file? Okay, right here. So what am I comparing? Instructor ID. Is there an instructor ID in my test here? No, there is no instructor ID. That's because I used the constructor, which doesn't take an instructor ID. But if I did, can I assign an instructor ID here? Well, I can just say instructor dot instructor ID and give it a value like 10 or whatever. Because this is no longer going to the database, I'm doing it entirely in the mocking world. Okay. So if I did this, then I can compare the two objects. So I can compare instructor object with added instructor. Okay, so now let's check to see if the instructor's last names are considered the same and whether the entire objects are considered to be equivalent. So I'll rebuild the solution. Okay, and we need to go to the test. Windows Test Explorer, and once it builds, it should show you both the tests, not just one alone. Let's see if it. It's still taking its time building it. Okay, it's scheduling tests. There is instructors controller should add new instructor, return view for list all instructors. So I use run all. Okay. As I said, if mine passes, it means I've figured it out. You haven't if yours is not. But the main thing is I want you to look. This is not so easy, right? You have to think through it. And the only way you're going to understand this if you do it. So this will be on the final exam. So you need to know it. It is challenging, but you need to know it. You need to do it on your project. Without having this, actually we should have a test for every one of our methods, because that's the only way we know. Right now, I was testing this functionality. How did I have to figure out whether this worked or not? By actually going to the UI, and that's not how you should be testing it. You should be testing it right here. That's why these unit tests are so important. So again, this may not add value in terms of functionality, but in terms of quality of code, this is really important. I'll stop here because this is actually something you need to observe, and I don't know, half of you had stayed awake, I think, so I don't know how much of this sunk in. I have recorded. I could see some of you actually falling asleep as you were here. On another day, I might have deliberately woken you up, but today I thought, okay. Anyway, so the issue is I'll stop, but my expectation is you're going to have at least two of the controllers working with select, with add, and I want you to explore edit. Edit is very similar. Delete is actually simpler, but it's slightly different, so I will leave it for Tuesday. But I want you to explore for the list, for the add, as well as the edit. Edit is going to be very similar to adding. Okay, I'm going to, let's see. Okay, Nate, yeah.